Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world awash with information, yet we often drown in confusion. Thinking clearly is not a luxury, it is survival. Allow me to share 7 keynotes on the art of clear thinking. Our brains are wired for speed, not accuracy. When we see something that looks obvious, we often stop thinking. It feels comfortable to embrace what is right in front of us, what is easy to grasp, what makes sense at first glance, but the obvious is often a mirage. It lures us in, tells us to relax, convinces us that we already understand. This is the trap. The obvious trap works because we are built to conserve energy. Thinking deeply is costly. It demands attention, focus, discipline. So the mind cuts corners. It clings to first impressions, surface patterns, and familiar explanations. A headline catches your eye. You assume the story must be true. A confident speaker presents a simple solution. You assume complexity has been conquered. A crowd nods in agreement. You assume they must know something you don't. Each of these is the obvious trap in action. Consider how we judge success. We look at a company that dominates the market and we think they must have had a brilliant strategy. We look at a celebrity and we think they must have talent beyond measure. But often what looks obvious, talent, strategy, intelligence, is only part of the story. Hidden beneath are invisible layers, luck, timing, networks, chance events that never make it into the neat narrative. We are seduced by what is visible, while the invisible shapes the outcome. The obvious trap also thrives in statistics. If the crime rate in your city drops this year, the obvious conclusion is that the new mayor's policies are working. But crime fluctuates for dozens of reasons: demographics, economic cycles, even weather. To assume the obvious explanation is to confuse correlation with causation. The truth is rarely as straightforward as the first explanation your mind serves up. The same trap deceives us in everyday life. You see someone driving an expensive car, and the obvious conclusion is that they must be rich, but perhaps the car is leased, the debt is mounting, and their wealth is an illusion. You hear that a new diet made your colleague lose weight, and the obvious conclusion is that the diet works. But perhaps they were also sleeping more, exercising more, or simply eating less overall. The easy answer is not the real one. Our education does not train us well to resist the obvious. In school, the questions have one correct answer, usually the simplest one. In real life, questions rarely have just one answer, and the simplest is often the most deceptive. The danger of the obvious is that it kills curiosity. Once you accept the first explanation, you stop searching for others. Once you settle on the surface, you forget to look beneath. The obvious trap is comforting because it feels like clarity. It feels like progress. It feels like knowledge. But in truth, it is a disguise, a trick of the mind, a false shortcut that takes us further from reality rather than closer to it. We live in a culture addicted to more information, more data, more opinions, more choices. We scroll endlessly, consume endlessly, and believe that accumulating more facts will automatically lead to better decisions. Yet the paradox is clear: the more we try to take in, the less we truly understand. Clarity does not emerge from excess. It emerges from subtraction. Imagine a glass of water into which you keep pouring soil. The more you stir, the murkier it becomes. Only when you stop adding and allow the sediment to settle does the water regain its transparency. The mind works the same way. Flood it with details, trivia, and noise, and you lose sight of what matters. Give it space, silence, and restraint, and suddenly the outline of truth begins to show itself. The illusion of more is better is particularly dangerous in the age of information. You can check the news every 5 minutes, track stock prices every second, compare reviews for hours before buying something as trivial as a toothbrush. The result is not wiser decisions, but paralysis. Excess data does not enlighten. It overwhelms. The clarity you crave is drowned by the noise you invite. Decision-making offers countless examples. A doctor ordering unnecessary tests often believes more results will yield better answers. In reality, more tests create confusion, false positives, and a spiral of needless interventions. An investor reading every financial forecast ends up chasing contradictions, mistaking chatter for insight. A leader trying to consider every possible variable before acting often delays until opportunity has passed. In each case, more leads not to confidence, but to hesitation. The power of less lies in focus. Focus is not about adding layers of knowledge, but stripping them away until only the essential remains. A chef can have a pantry full of exotic spices, but a great dish often relies on just a few ingredients used with precision. A painter can own every shade on the spectrum, but a masterpiece may be built from a restrained palette. Thinking works the same way. The mind that edits ruthlessly, that cuts away clutter, that dares to ignore the non-essential, this is the mind that sees clearly. The human tendency to equate abundance with safety reinforces the trap. We hoard arguments, justifications, references, convinced that having more will protect us from being wrong. But clarity does not come from defending yourself with mountains of information. It comes from isolating the one or two pieces of evidence that actually matter. When you strip away excess, you don't weaken your reasoning, you sharpen it. There is also a psychological calm that arises from less. With fewer inputs, fewer distractions, fewer competing claims, the mind stops racing. You no longer jump from headline to headline, opinion to opinion, voice to voice. You settle into stillness, and in stillness, priorities reveal themselves. In a world obsessed with accumulation, the true luxury is not having more, but choosing less. The human mind loves speed. It rewards quick judgments, snap reactions, instant conclusions. Long before you reflect, your intuition has already whispered an answer, and it feels so natural that questioning it seems unnecessary. This is the danger. The first thought, the gut response, the instant I know, is not always knowledge. It is often habit bias or impulse dressed up as certainty. Intuition has deep evolutionary roots. Our ancestors survived because they could react without hesitation. A rustle in the grass was interpreted as a predator, and running immediately was safer than calmly analyzing whether it was the wind. Quick instincts kept people alive. Yet what was once protection against lions now misguides us in boardrooms, classrooms, markets, and daily life. The world we face today does not reward speed of reaction as much as it rewards depth of reflection. Think of buying a product. Your first intuition may be, this looks impressive, sleek, well designed, it must be good. But packaging deceives, branding manipulates. The gut feeling that says quality is often just the echo of clever marketing. Or imagine meeting a person for the first time. Within seconds, intuition forms a judgment, trustworthy, arrogant, intelligent, weak. These judgments feel accurate because they arrive instantly. Yet research shows that first impressions are heavily colored by appearance, accent, and superficial cues, none of which tell the whole truth about character. Intuition is also deeply vulnerable to emotion. A mood can bend perception without you noticing. If you are hungry, angry, or tired, your gut decisions shift. What feels like instinct is often just chemistry. The brain confuses bodily states with judgment. A small irritation can turn into dislike for a person. A good meal can make a risky idea feel safe. The speed of intuition hides these distortions. Financial decisions highlight the danger. Many investors trust their gut when a stock feels right. They chase trends, follow hunches, or panic sell on impulse. The result is often loss, because intuition responds to excitement and fear, not to rational analysis. The gut is powerful in detecting emotion, but emotions are poor guides for long-term choices. Clear thinking demands stepping back, slowing down, challenging the feeling rather than obeying it. Even in professional expertise, intuition can betray. A doctor may instantly suspect a common disease and overlook a rare but correct diagnosis. A judge may lean toward a verdict within minutes of hearing a case, influenced by unconscious bias. A manager may favor the candidate who just feels right, confusing charm for competence. In each instance, the danger is not that intuition speaks, but that it is followed without question. The antidote is not to reject intuition completely. It can be valuable, especially in areas where experience has trained the unconscious mind to detect patterns too subtle for deliberate thought. A chess master may sense the right move intuitively because years of practice have carved those instincts deeply. But most of our daily decisions are not made in domains where intuition has been finely tuned. They are made in uncertain, complex, noisy environments where first feelings mislead far more often than they guide. Human beings are social creatures. We are drawn to the comfort of crowds, to the reassurance that if many people believe something, it must carry weight. Popularity feels like proof. When an idea echoes from every corner, when a behavior spreads through society, when a product dominates the market, we instinctively assume correctness. Yet history shows that the masses are often wrong. Widespread belief does not transform error into truth. Consider medical practices of the past. For centuries, bloodletting was accepted as the cure for countless illnesses. It was popular, endorsed by respected physicians, demanded by patients. Yet it harmed more than it healed. The popularity of the practice kept it alive, not its effectiveness. Or take the financial world. During every market bubble, the majority believes prices will rise forever. Everyone invests, everyone talks about it, everyone feels safe because everyone else is doing the same. But bubbles burst and the very popularity of the idea becomes its downfall. Popularity seduces because it reduces uncertainty. When many people agree, the individual feels less exposed. The burden of being wrong seems lighter if others are wrong too. Conformity offers psychological shelter. To stand apart is to feel vulnerable, to risk ridicule, to carry the weight of doubt alone. The mind therefore equates consensus with safety. But safety is not the same as truth. A wrong idea embraced by millions remains wrong. Think of culture and trends. A book climbs the bestseller list and suddenly it is assumed to be profound. A film wins mass praise and its artistic merit is rarely questioned. A fashion spreads and people wear it not because it suits them, but because it signals belonging. Popularity manufactures the illusion of quality. Yet many bestsellers fade quickly. Many films celebrated in their time are forgotten, and fashions that once defined an era now look absurd. Popularity is a mirror of taste, not of truth. The danger is amplified by technology. Social media accounts likes, shares, and followers, and we interpret the numbers as evidence of value. A post with millions of views must be insightful. An influencer with millions of followers must be wise. Yet the metrics measure attention, not accuracy. What spreads fastest is not what is most correct, but what is most emotional, most shocking, most pleasing to the instincts we cannot resist. Virality is not verification. In politics, the trap becomes even sharper. A leader who captures the crowd's enthusiasm is assumed to be right simply because of numbers. The volume of applause replaces the weight of argument. But truth is not democratic. It is not determined by majority vote. A lie repeated by millions is still a lie. A slogan chanted by the masses can still be empty of sense. The clarity of thought requires resisting the urge to equate headcount with evidence. To think clearly is to separate popularity from validity. It is to remember that the crowd offers comfort, not certainty. It is to understand that following the many is easy. But truth is often found in the uncomfortable position of standing with the few. The modern world overwhelms us with information. We are surrounded by headlines, notifications, charts, updates, and endless commentary. The sheer volume creates the illusion that more data equals more understanding. But much of what reaches us is not signal, it is noise. Signal carries meaning. Signal helps us see patterns, make decisions, and grasp reality. Noise distracts, excites, confuses, and ultimately leads us astray. The art of thinking clearly lies in separating one from the other. Noise dominates because it appeals to our emotions. A single dramatic story grabs us more powerfully than a mountain of dry statistics. If a plane crashes, we feel fear of flying even though millions of safe flights go unnoticed. If the stock market plunges one afternoon, panic spreads though long-term data may show steady growth. Noise screams for attention because it is immediate, vivid, and sensational. Signal, by contrast, is quiet, subtle, slow to emerge. It requires patience to detect. Financial markets provide a perfect case study. Every day, countless analysts and commentators issue predictions, explain minor fluctuations, and spin stories to keep viewers engaged. Most of this is noise. The true signal, the long-term trend of earnings, productivity, demographics, gets buried beneath daily chatter. The investor who mistakes noise for signal trades frantically, loses money, and feels constant stress. The investor who ignores noise and watches the signal patiently builds wealth. The same pattern applies in personal life. Consider health. Every week, new articles announce that a certain food prevents disease or that another food increases risk. One day coffee is harmful, the next it is beneficial. If you chase every headline, your diet changes daily and confusion grows. But the signal is stable and has been for decades. Exercise regularly, eat whole foods, avoid excess. Noise distracts, signal endures. The human mind struggles with this distinction because it is biased toward novelty. We are attracted to what is fresh, surprising, and emotionally charged. Noise exploits this weakness perfectly. Signal rarely entertains. Signal requires repetition, context, and long-term observation. It tells you things you already suspect rather than shocking you with something new. The boring truth is usually the real truth, but boredom is precisely why most people ignore it. Technology amplifies noise further. Social media thrives on rapid updates and emotional content. The algorithms reward what spreads fastest, not what matters most. A rumor, a joke, a scandal races across screens before facts have time to surface. Signal drowns in the flood of attention directed toward noise. The more we consume, the less clarity we achieve because we confuse visibility with importance. Learning to filter noise requires discipline. It means asking whether a piece of information changes your understanding in a lasting way. If it does not alter your judgment tomorrow, next week, or next year, it is probably noise. If it fits into a broader pattern, if it clarifies rather than distracts, if it deepens rather than excites, it may be signal. The challenge is not that signal is absent, but that it whispers while noise shouts. The human mind is not balanced when it comes to pleasure and pain. We like to imagine ourselves as rational calculators, weighing benefits against costs with perfect neutrality. In reality, losses cut deeper than gains delight. Losing $100 hurts more than gaining $100 brings joy. This bias is powerful, invisible, and it shapes countless decisions we make without realizing it. Consider investing. A portfolio grows steadily, but one bad week erases part of the profit. The pain of that dip is far stronger than the satisfaction of months of gains. Many investors sell too early, not because logic demands it, but because the fear of losing outweighs the hope of winning. The market punishes those who cannot endure small setbacks, yet endurance is precisely what is required for long-term success. In everyday life, the same principle applies. Imagine receiving 10 compliments in a single day and one insult. Which will dominate your thoughts at night? The insult. Our minds magnify loss, giving it a disproportionate power. The imbalance distorts relationships, self-image, and confidence. We underestimate the good because we cannot detach from the sting of the bad. Businesses exploit this bias with remarkable precision. Warranties, return policies, and limited time offers are all designed to trigger the fear of losing out. Marketers know that customers will act faster to avoid a potential loss than to secure an equivalent gain. A message that says, "Don't miss this," is more persuasive than one that says, "You could benefit from this." The avoidance of loss drives behavior more forcefully than the pursuit of gain. Negotiations reveal the same psychology. When asked to make concessions, people often resist far more fiercely than they celebrate equivalent advantages. A manager offering an employee a raise will generate moderate gratitude. The same manager threatening to take away a benefit will generate outrage. Both situations alter the balance sheet equally, but the emotional weight is not equal. Losing privileges feels unbearable while gaining them feels merely pleasant. This bias is rooted in survival. For early humans, the cost of losing food, shelter, or safety was often fatal. The benefit of gaining more was helpful, but not as urgent as avoiding loss. Evolution etched this asymmetry into the brain. What protected us in prehistory now undermines us in modern life. Today, the exaggerated fear of loss leads to missed opportunities, stagnant choices, and unnecessary caution. Think of careers. Many people remain in unfulfilling jobs because they fear losing stability more than they desire the potential gain of change. They stay in safe but stagnant paths because the pain of imagined loss dominates the promise of growth. The same holds true in relationships, investments, and creative pursuits. We cling to what we have, even if it is mediocre, because the prospect of losing it feels worse than the prospect of finding something better feels good. The greatest enemy of clear thinking is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. People rarely say, "I don't know." They prefer to sound certain, to project confidence, to appear informed even when their understanding is shallow. This tendency creates false clarity, a mirage of certainty that prevents us from seeking the truth. Real clarity begins with humility, the quiet acknowledgement of how little we actually know. Humility in thinking does not mean weakness. It means recognizing limits. The world is vast, complex, and filled with variables beyond our comprehension. When you admit the boundaries of your knowledge, you open the door to curiosity. You allow space for learning. You free yourself from the trap of defending positions that may be flawed. Arrogance closes the mind. Humility keeps it open. In science, progress depends on this principle. The greatest discoveries often began with someone admitting ignorance. A scientist who says, "We don't yet understand this," has already taken the first step toward discovery. By contrast, history is full of confident claims, later proven wrong: the certainty that the earth was flat, the conviction that diseases were caused by bad air, the belief that heavier than air flight was impossible. Each was defended with pride, and each crumbled when humility allowed new perspectives to emerge. The same principle applies to everyday decisions. A leader who pretends to know everything cannot adapt when reality proves otherwise. A manager who refuses to admit uncertainty makes reckless choices to preserve an image of control. A parent who insists on always having answers teaches children dogma instead of curiosity. The refusal to admit ignorance creates fragility because reality eventually exposes the pretense. Humility, by contrast, strengthens decision-making because it leaves room for correction. Humility also tempers overconfidence. Human beings consistently overestimate their abilities, how well they drive, how accurately they predict events, how much they understand a subject. This overconfidence leads to mistakes, wasted resources, and avoidable failures. Admitting "I may be wrong" or "I don't know enough" feels uncomfortable, but it shields us from rushing into poor choices. Overconfidence blinds, humility protects. Even in communication, humility is essential. When two people argue, each often assumes complete knowledge of the subject. The discussion becomes a contest of pride rather than a search for truth. If even one participant approaches the conversation with humility, asking questions instead of asserting, listening instead of attacking, the chance of mutual understanding increases dramatically. The willingness to be corrected is a strength, not a weakness. Humility is not the denial of knowledge. It is the recognition that knowledge is partial, incomplete, always evolving. Every answer raises new questions. Every conclusion contains conditions and limits. The world is not as simple as our minds would like it to be. Clarity requires constant adjustment, constant doubt, constant willingness to step back and reconsider. Only the humble mind can hold complexity without collapsing into dogma.